We've spent 2 episodes in the dark. Not the darkness of the cold open, though that served its purpose. Rather a darkness of a question that doesn't resolve cleanly. A word with no clean origin. A translation with no clean defense. A king whose life doesn't match the warning he'd allegedly inspired. We've torn at the foundation because the foundation deserves tearing at. But demolition was never the point. It was merely to clear the way for a new construction. Tonight, we build something. There is another Battus in the ancient world. Not a king, not a colony founder, but a herdsman, living on a rock near Monolos in Arcadia. A quiet man in a quiet place, who one day witnessed something he was never meant to see. Hermes stealing the cattle of Apollo, driving them past Battus' dwelling, under cover of distance and shadow. When Battus confronted Hermes about the impending disruption to his life, the angering of a god that governs agriculture itself, Hermes humored him by offering him a bribe, livestock, in exchange for his silence, and Battus accepted. He swore an oath, "I will tell no one what I've seen." Hermes hid the cattle, then returned, in disguise, a different face, with a different offer. This time a shining robe, a staff, something more. "Tell me," the stranger said, "have you seen any cattle pass this way?" And Battus, who had sworn an oath, looked at what was being offered and told him everything. Hermes then revealed himself and struck Battus where he stood. The herdsman, who could not hold his covenant against the weight of a second reward, was turned to stone, frozen forever. Eternal frost, or eternal heat. His voice gone, his humanity gone, fixed in the posture of a man, mid-betrayal. This story predates Matthew by 7 centuries. It circulated through every corner of the Hellenized world in oral tradition, in Hesiod, in Ovid, in the Homeric hymns. By the 1st century, it wasn't an exotic myth. It was the cultural common ground, as recognizable to a Greek literate audience as Judas's betrayal or Esau trading his birthright for a bowl of stew. Everyone in Matthew's audience knew this story. After all, there were wars fought over the inclusion of these myths in the Maccabees. And myth travels faster than written language, in an area of Greek lingua franca. Everyone knew who Battus was, and how he treated powers beyond himself. Now consider the word again, Battalogeste. Log, logos, one of the most loaded words in the Greek language. In philosophical tradition, it carries reason, rational thought, the organizing principle behind action, the pattern of thinking that precedes and shapes what is spoken. Not merely speech, but logic, pattern, even mindset. When Matthew compounds bata with logio, he's not saying stammerer like Battus. He's not even saying babble like Battus. He's saying, don't reason like Battus. Don't approach this with Battus-logic. And what is Battus-logic? One covenant abandoned for a better offer. One oath dissolved by greed. One transaction layered over another until the relation itself is consumed by what can be extracted from it. Battus didn't fail because he spoke too many words. Battus failed because he approached the divine as a negotiation. This is what it seems Yeshua is warning against. Not the form of prayer, the posture of it, the logic behind it, the assumption that God can be worked, that the right sequence of words, the right volume of petition, the right accumulation of religious effort will move heaven toward your agenda. Pattalogeste, the many words of the Gentiles, is the symptom. Battus-logic is the disease. Here's what I find quietly astonishing. The Church Fathers, without this etymology, without the Herdsman myth as their lens, were already leaning towards something closer to this interpretation than mere repetition. John Chrysostomus warned not against the length of prayer, but against the mercenary petition, approaching God with the spirit of man seeking payment rather than communion. Augustine saw the danger in Matthew 6:7 as the reduction of prayer to a technique of procurement, as though the divine could be moved by volume or persistence of demand rather than by the orientation of the heart. John Cassian drew the line, not at repetitive prayer, but at prayer that seeks to manipulate rather than align. The soul that comes to God with an agenda rather than an offering. And the glossa ordinaria, the vast medieval synthesis of patristic wisdom, named it quietly as the want of faith. Not the want of brevity, not the want of originality, a want of faith. These men sensed the shape of something they couldn't fully name. They didn't have the Herdsman. They didn't have the linguistic argument. But they were reading the same passage and arriving instinctively, theologically, at the same place. Transactional prayer is a faith problem. So too is Battus-logic. And then Yeshua, immediately, in the very next breath, shows them what the alternative looks like. Not less prayer, not shorter prayer, different prayer. Our Father in heaven, not my supplier in the cosmos. Hallowed be thy name, not my ego or my requests. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, not my plans, not my ends, but God's. Give us this our daily or transubstantial bread. Not wealth, not surplus, not leverage. The Eucharist. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Covenant faithfulness modeled downward before it's received upward. Lead us not into temptation, because Battus faced his test and failed it. We ask to be led away from the moment of choosing. Every line in the Lord's Prayer is the structural opposite of Battus-logic. Not extraction, but submission. Not transaction, but covenant. The timeless truth of Battalogeste III is this. Prayer is not a negotiation, nor is it a technique. It's not the accumulation of the right words in sufficient quantity to move a reluctant God toward your agenda. Prayer is the posture of a creation before its creator. Honest, trusting, covenantal. Matthew 6:7 has been asking the same question for 2,000 years, and it is asking it still. Do I approach God as a father or as a transaction? How then do you pray?